Hey everyone, Tech Steve here. Today we're going to take a look at two HDMI adapters from my friends over at OREI. The first one is what they call a 2x1 switch, and what this can be used for is, let's say for example, you have a new television, supports 120 hertz, and you have two HDMI 2.1s. One of them might go over to a sound bar, and then that frees up one for your gaming consoles. But if you have two gaming consoles, you either have to switch the wires or use something like this. Now the great thing about this is that you can have two inputs and then one output that can go over to that single one on your television. Plus, this does have an analog and a fiber optic output. And this is what they call a 2x2 matrix. And the thing about this particular one is that you have two HDMI 2.1 inputs and two HDMI 2.1 outputs. So what that means, you can run your Xbox Series X, your PS5 into this box, and then you can run it on 220 hertz displays like I have back here. Additional to that, it does have an analog and a digital output. But to get everything started, let's see what comes in the box. This is the BK-202A, and in the box you get an AC adapter, a user's manual, a remote control, and here we have the BK-202A. Now this one has the IR blaster input for the remote control. It also has a series of lights, and you can choose from any input to go to any output, which is great about this particular unit. You have the EDID, and you do have the USB for service. On the back of it, you do have two HDMI 2.1 inputs and two HDMI 2.1 outputs. So you can plug an Xbox, PlayStation into it and go out to two separate monitors. There's also a fiber optic output, a 3.5 millimeter analog output, and your DC input for power. And next we have the BK-201A. In the box, you get an AC adapter, a user's manual, a remote control. On the front of it, you have your IR blaster input for the remote control. There's also some indicators for your power, your inputs, your outputs, and you have the switch where you can choose from different devices. It also has EDID and a service port input. On the back of it, you're going to find two inputs. So this could be your PS5, this could be your Xbox Series X, going out to your television, and then you have a fiber optic output as well as an analog output and a DC input for the power. I will tell you that this is a 40 gigabit video selector, so it doesn't support up to the full 48 gigabits, but it will support 8K at 60 frames, 8K at 30 frames, 4K at 120 hertz, and they will support all your major HDR outputs. Now let's take a look at how everything is set up behind me, but I will tell you I'm not going to be using the 21A today just because it's the exact same connection except for it has one TV output instead of two, but the insides are going to work exactly like the bigger model. I took the output over to one TV using HDMI 2.1 cables, and then I went ahead and plugged the second television in. Next, we need some input sources, so I took the PlayStation and ran it to the HDMI 2.1 there, and then here we ran it to the Xbox. At this point, you can still use your TV speakers, but if you have some type of headphones or speakers that has a fiber optic or has a 3.5 millimeter input, you can actually use that audio source as well. Now, before I show you guys how to get 120 hertz out of the PlayStation, you can see right now with the gaming zone turned on, both TVs are reading 60 frames per second. So what I'm going to do is just go over here to the settings and show you what it looks like inside of there. And if we go to video information, you can see it's reading 3840 by 2160 at 60 hertz. So you just load up Dirt 5, you can see it's at 120 hertz. And the way I did that, and this may vary from game that you play, is go into the settings, go down to the video, and just make sure it's on high frame rate mode. And with that been selected, I can go back into the system and then go down to screen and video. Now you can see that's reading 3840 by 2160, and the variable refresh rate is going to get 48 hertz up to 120 hertz. And that's pretty much how you put it in that mode. Now, depending on which game you play, it can drop back down to 60 hertz. I just want to show you guys, I have this switcher connected to the Xbox on input number 2. There's all the cables going behind the TVs. And over here on this TV, you can see that I'm getting 4K, 120 hertz, HDR10, Dolby Vision capabilities, and everything here. And if we go to the second TV, you can see it's giving me the exact same specs. So that's what the switcher looks like connected to an Xbox. Now let's answer some of the questions that you may have about these adapters. Well, first of all, the one with the two video outputs can only run the exact same signal on both televisions at the same time. So what that means is that if you have a 60 hertz television or display and a 120 hertz television or display, it's going to drop the resolution down to 60 hertz mainly because of a technology built into most adapters called EDID. But what is that? And this is extended display identification, which basically takes the video card output and automatically matches the displays to their native resolution. And that's what these jumpers are right here on the front. And depending on your display, you might want to reconfigure these to get the proper outputs. And they give you all the different configurations in the instruction book so you can make sure you match up your displays so you don't have any issues. Now, I will tell you that these adapters don't come with any kind of cables. In fact, I recommend you look for certified HDMI 2.1 cables with a HD CP up to 2.3, and that's going to give you the best capabilities of not having any kind of issues with adapters flickering all the time and things like that. And it's recommended that you use cables only up to 10 foot if you want to do 120 Hertz. But if you're only going to do 1080p, you can go all the way up to 49 feet, no issues. Now we're going to test the sound using this fiber optic output on the back of the adapter. And I'm going to attempt to see if the TV speakers work at the exact same time as we can send audio over to this. Now keep in mind, it does have a 3.5 millimeter output as well if you don't want to use fiber optic, but I got this test speaker up here to give it a try. If you're using the audio format, keep in mind it does support your Dolby Digital, your DTS, but it does not support Dolby Atmos pass-through. And if you decide to use the fiber optic, keep in mind that it will support 5.1 channel, and that's for Dolby Digital, DTS, also your PCM2. But the 3.5 output is not a headphone output, and it only supports stereo. So let's go ahead and test it out. I got a speaker right here. See, I'm getting audio. And then I have TV number 1 over here. Let's go ahead and crank up the volume. And I have TV number 2 over here. And since the PS5 and the Xbox Series X don't have a fiber optic output to go over to some gaming headsets like your Turtle Beach and your Astro, now you have a fiber optic output to be able to run that sound at the same time, play your TV speakers or your monitor speakers. Pretty cool. With this 2X adapter, let me show you what you can do if you have 2 gaming consoles. So let's say, for example, I want to play a console on a different monitor. So if I hit this button, it's going to blink for a second for the EDID, and now I'm playing a separate gaming console. Or I can press it again, and I can switch over to the same thing. I can hit this one, goes back over to the other console, so you can see where you can switch it back and forth. Now, when it comes to audio, this TV will have its own volume for that particular game. That TV will have its own volume for that game. But when it comes to the fiber optic output, that's a different story. For example, what I find out is that input 1 will go to this if you're using 2 different monitors. But if you play the exact same game, it will actually have audio for both games since it's seeing the same signal. And I also want to check the input lag. So I put this particular TV on gaming mode so we can check the input. And it looks like we're getting about 14.4 milliseconds. Now let's run it through the selector. I went and plugged the input lag in where I had the PS5 plugged in. The TV's in gaming mode. Let's see if we lose any kind of input. So we're getting 14.3. So as you can see, we're not losing any kind of input going through the selector. So I showed you guys just about everything you need to know about these 2 adapters. Keep in mind, one of them is for 2 gaming consoles or streaming devices and 1 television. The other one is the same thing with 2 televisions. And again, both of them has those outputs so you can run it over to your soundbar or your headphones or anything that you have while still maintaining up to 120 Hertz. Now, people are going to ask me, can I use these on 60 Hertz television? And yes, you can, but I will tell you that there's other adapters that might be able to save you a couple of bucks unless you plan on getting 120 Hertz television in the future. Will these turn your 60 Hertz television into 120 Hertz? The answer is no. The last thing I'll leave you guys with is that after I did a lot of different setups, I will tell you that they're not perfect. In some cases, you're gonna have to really play with those switches, but if you have a setup like this or 2 monitors or anything that supports a higher frequency, then you might wanna look at these adapters and they may be the solution for you. I'm Tech Steve. Thanks all for watching, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace!
Tech Steve.